Welcome to a special episode of the only podcast that's dedicated to making you a faster cyclist, the Ask a Cycling Coach podcast presented by TrainerRoad. I'm Coach Jonathan Lee, and this week we're going to be talking about Unbound Gravel with two athletes, with Santa Cruz Hit Squad's Keegan Swenson, and also with the Feed and Ice Friction's Alex Wild. I assume you'll be wondering, why aren't we talking to Sofia Gomez Villafana as well, considering she had an impressive result and won, and we tried to reach out to her, but she was unavailable. But we get to learn from these two athletes. It's a short podcast today, and we are going to ask these athletes what their strategy was. We are going to find out what went well, what didn't go well, and what they plan to do next time they race it to do better. This is cool because it shows that pro athletes, even at the top of the game, Keegan, for example, being out-sprinted by just basically a bike length at the end after 200 miles, which is crazy. But these athletes at the top of the game, they still make mistakes and they still learn. And it's really cool to be able to see that, and hopefully that can teach us to always learn from our performances, good or bad, win or lose. So I hope you enjoy this special episode. Without further ado, let's jump right in. Santa Cruz Hit Squad and Monster Energy's Keegan Swenson. Good to have you, Keegan.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You got second place at Unbound, and let's go into some of the details. 9 hours and 22 minutes and 5 seconds. You averaged 21.3 miles an hour, or 34.3 kilometers per hour. You had an average power of 272 and a normalized power of 304 watts for all 9 hours and 22 minutes, which is insane because I think that's my threshold right now, and you did it for 9.5 hours. 1,163 watt max, which was not in the sprint finish. It was actually on the climb into campus that you were doing when Ian Boswell attacked, and you matched that one. I believe it was Ian Boswell that attacked there. Mm-hmm. And then 1,088 was your 5-second power, and that was on the same climb to campus. And during the sprint finish, you did 915 watts for 10 seconds. You had 0.8 for your intensity factor, so you held roughly 80% of your threshold for the whole race. That's really high, what people call fractional utilization. Shows you're super fit. And some other interesting bits, 1.12 variability index, so pretty steady power, all things considered, right? For a race when you're racing at the front. 599 TSS, which is just nuts. And 9,174 kilojoules. In terms of time, you spent above your FTP for that race. And this is roughly because I don't know if your FTP is actually 380. I reckon it's a bit higher, but we're going off the numbers. And 18.4% of your day was spent above threshold. So that's over an hour and 40 minutes, which is pretty crazy. Okay. Also interesting, when I look at your power profile, it seems like after 5-minute efforts, that's where it started to drop down more. So those 5-minute efforts, it looks like there were quite a few of them in the race where you really had to be on the gas for as long as 5 minutes. Granted, this is you racing at the front versus folks listening to this may not have been racing at the front. So maybe that 5-minute power isn't that important, but this is the insight into Keegan's race. So Keegan, what was your strategy for Unbound?
Man, honestly, I had a few different strategies kind of laid out just like weather dependent, and kind of was depending on what the field was doing and how hard everyone was willing to race. And anyway, the forecast was calling for a small chance of rain, and luckily it held out till halfway through. So we only had to race 5 hours in the rain, which is great. Strategy was kind of make it reasonably hard early on the climbs. And luckily it seemed like everyone was kind of on the same page to try and split. I mean, there's a huge group, hundreds big. So yeah, it split fairly quick once it started rolling. Like there was a couple of us kind of taking turns up the climb, just riding like steady hard. I mean, like between 350 and 400 over them, just to try and slowly whittle down the bunch.
So like sweet spot to threshold for you?
Sweet spot to threshold. There was a few efforts that were above, but for the most part, I mean, whenever I was trying to set pace, that was the pace. I figured that would take enough of the field off slowly. And it did. And then try and push the pace on the descents and through some of the like more technical areas as well, because there was like some Jeep trail early on. And then just kind of keep my eyes open and follow any moves that I thought, looked like they would go. And there was the first big move happened. I mean, you can probably see on the power profile, that was probably a couple hours in, maybe 2 hours, maybe a little less. Yeah, I know it was a pretty big move. It was like 6 or 7 minutes, so close to 400.
Yes, I can see that right there at about 2 hours and 20 minutes-ish, somewhere around there. There were some spikes earlier on, but it stays high for quite a while, just above or right around threshold.
Yeah, that was the first big one, I think. And somehow I missed the initial move. I was stuck behind a couple of riders and the move went and they didn't close the gap and they were gaining time rather quickly. So I figured I had to make the jump. So I made the jump and dragged a few other riders along with me up to that group. And that turned out to be the kind of the decisive moment of the race. Like after that, that was the group of 15 that then slowly whittled down to what became the group of 5. I guess there was another kind of big select move a bit later on. Ivor attacked it. I think it was about 120 miles in, I want to say. That one was pretty full gas. He attacked it once again. I was kind of stuck in the bunch and kind of missed the initial move. So I had to bridge up to him and Ian. And then there was the 3 of us, and Pete and Alexi then came up a few minutes later. And then that was the 5. So that was like that was the last big select move.
Nice.
But yeah, otherwise, I think I executed it fairly well. But a few things I could have done differently. So
yeah, let's talk about that actually. What did go well? If you were to isolate it down to a few things that went well, what would they be?
I'd say nutrition went really well. Everything went to plan. I definitely didn't eat as much solid food as I was planning on, which wasn't much. I was going to eat like 2 Hostess coffee cakes, and the rest I was using the Never Second 30-gram gels and like mix. So everything else was liquid or gel calories. So I ended up only eating 1 coffee cake, and the rest was just gels. I think it was just the pace was high, and when the rain started coming, like it just makes it even harder to deal with packaging and food and like all that stuff. So I was just focusing on liquid calories and easy stuff. So luckily I had enough gels with me that I could rely on just that and didn't have to go back to anything solid.
Did you train?
Yeah, that went really well.
Did you train your gut to be able to handle just the gels like that beforehand, or were you concerned about that at all?
No, for most of I did a pretty big block with Russell. We did like a 2-week training block, like 60 some hours. And some of those days were pretty gel heavy. Like on the days that were more intense, like more N+ tempo days, I really focused on trying to just eating gels and I mean, a couple solid stuff here and there, and then a lot of liquid calories, just kind of to prepare myself for Unbound, because I had a feeling it was going to be like that and the pace was going to be high. And if you don't train your gut to take in that stuff, then it's just not going to accept it. But you have to do a lot and just train yourself to be a garbage disposal. I feel like, just take anything and put it down. And and it works. But if you're not used to it, then it's going to kill you. So I think I ended up right around 120 grams an hour. I was shooting for a little bit more in hopes that, like, thinking that I probably wouldn't get it all down and that I would end up closer to 120, which was fine.
So, nice work. So nutrition went well. What else went well?
Nutrition went well. Equipment went really well. I think that was perfect. My 1x setup was super good. I ran the 1x with a 48 front and a 1050 Eagle cassette and derailleur.
Did you use your 50 ever on the course?
Never used the 50. I used the 42 a few times, right below the 50. So actually that means for me, that means it was a perfect setup. If I never used the 50, that means it was dialed. I did use the 10. I would have been probably would have been fine with like a 46 10, but it was nice not to have to use the 10 very often. And if it was dry and really fast, I probably would have spent more time in the 10. So yeah, equipment was good. Setup was dialed. Then I used 40 Maxxis Refuse, the slicks, which
those are really tough tires.
They're really tough. Yeah.
Not very fast in terms of rolling resistance compared to other options, but they're really tough.
Yeah. They have an extra layer called Max Shield that none of the other tires have. So, and they are a 60 TPI casing, which rolls a little bit slower, but I figured the lack of knobs would kind of help make up for the little bit of extra rolling resistance in the casing. So I use those with 30, 34 wheels. I was going to run 40, 47s, but it was a little bit windy, so I went a little bit shallower. And then had inserts in the wheels as well. And I should have ran even more pressure because I was hitting rim through the inserts. So I guess that was the only thing. I figured 30, 32 would be enough, but I was still tapping rim gently through the heavy casing and the insert. So I was like, I should have gone up like 2 PSI, but it was pretty close. It wasn't far off, Yeah, so all that went well. Tactics were pretty good. Like I did more work than like others because I was determined to bring this move back. So I think Pete, Boz, and I and a couple others did like the lion's share of the work to bring the break back because I wasn't there to finish or race for fourth. So I was like, well, if they're not going to work, then I will, because I felt good and I felt fine. So I figured a little extra work wouldn't kill me, But other than that, I think I raced relatively smart. So, yeah, group tactics were pretty good for a mountain biker. I'd say
not bad.
I didn't just sit on the front and ride hard. I just actually pulled through, unlike some of those other guys who are content to sit on. So, yeah.
Cool. What didn't go well? Let's get into that.
I think I could have raced a little more aggressively. I was thinking about that today when I was out actually on my spin. I think I never really felt under pressure out there. Like I always felt it totally in control and never felt like I had to go too deep. So I think that means I had a fair bit left. And I think it would have suited me better to make the race a little bit harder, or maybe attack and kind of go for, a little bit and try and get some other riders to go with me and get off the front early. Because obviously I think I can sustain a pretty high pace for a longer period of time. And that would have smoothed out the power curve as well. Instead of having these spiky efforts in the bunch with the attacks here and there, I could have just smoothed it out and just rolled like tempo sweet spot on the front and just rolled. So I think that was something I could improve on and just race it a little more to my strength. But I think I was a little bit hesitant because I never raced Unbound. And I've raced for 24 hours and I've raced some 7-hour races, but I haven't done a race like on rolling terrain that's this fast and that intense. At one point I looked down like 6 hours in, the NP was like 315 or 320. And I was like, sweet. Like, I don't know if we can keep doing this, but I guess we will,
Yeah.
So apparently I can do that. I can push it a little more because I felt like it wasn't easy by any means, but I felt like it was pretty comfortable. So I think in going back, I'll just try and race a little more aggressively and try and push the pace a little more. And hopefully that would mean that I wouldn't have to come down to a sprint finish perhaps, which would be nice.
Yeah. So race to your strengths. In other words, like recognize your strengths and race to that, which is always really hard when you're just
not hesitate to
like
at one point I had like a 20-meter gap off the front, just like after riding sweet spot up this climb. And I hesitated, and in hindsight, I should have just gone, as Tobin likes to say, hesitation wins bike races. So, which it doesn't, but when you're only 5 hours into a 9.5, 10-hour race, sometimes you do hesitate and you're like, maybe this is stupid. So
yeah, hesitation wins bike races for everybody else, not for the person that hesitates. That's
exactly.
Yeah. What else do you feel like you could improve on? So things you did well, let me recap that and then we can go back into this, but things you did well: nutrition, equipment, your overall strategy was good. Things you can improve so far: one is racing to your strengths more, which would have looked like for you racing more aggressively. What else would you have wanted to improve?
My sprint tactics going into the finish.
I was screaming at my TV, by the way, for like it was.
That sprint
is a very exciting finish.
I ran it through my head probably 100 times trying to think of a different scenario. And I've come up with a few different solutions. I think, you never know like what shoulda, coulda, woulda, but like you still want to like think about it. So if it happens again, you know exactly what to do. Should have attacked earlier, either counterattack balls on the hill or gone way before the tunnel and just like really caught him off guard. Because in hindsight, like I probably wasn't going to win that sprint against Ivar. Like maybe if I had timed it really well, but also I know, like if you're looking at the power file, I had all these spikes above 1,000 before that sprint, and I just can't do that. Like I know when I sprint, I have one really good kick. Like I can only do it once. I can't go above 1,000 multiple times. So that's why my sprint was relatively pretty bad. Like to only barely hit 1,000 watts for me is pretty low. Like I should be close to 1,400. So I think what happened is that sprint with Boz up the climb kind of wore me down, and I should have fully committed to that move and just gone. But I didn't. I hesitated because I thought I don't know what I wasn't thinking. And then there was another acceleration on the backside of the campus, closing attack from Lawrence that Ivar just followed me on. So he was there. Yeah, he also had one less sprint in his legs going into the sprint. And then in the initial sprint, it like I went too early, but when it seemed right because there's this 100-mile rider in the way, and I ended up going right at him. And then I was like, well, I'm in the front now. I might as well just go. Like, I don't think I was going to beat him if he went first. I wasn't going to be able to come around him because I knew he was going to be fast. So I was like, my best shots is just to try and maybe catch him off guard. And if the finish was a little bit earlier, then maybe I would have got him. But I also was a little bit blocked. I was one block off my head where the finish was. And, I just got beat. But yeah, anyway, I thought about this a lot, so I won't let it happen again, is what I'm saying.
Nice. With the relative ease at which you matched Boz's attack, I almost expected you to just counter right after. So it makes sense that you've arrived at that as a solution moving forward, something you do differently. Because when he attacked the others, it kind of strung out a little bit, and you were just like stuck to the wheel. So I was like,
I was seated, and I felt pretty good. But then my legs, I was kind of cramping going down that descent once we turned right. So maybe if I had gone all in, maybe I would have fully locked up and then not made it. And I guess in my mind, that move, like Sophia and I talked about, she's like, hey, and that move would have been like, you would have been either it would have worked and you would have won, or you would have cramped up and maybe finished 4th or 5th, So it would have been more of like a little bit more of a gamble in that sense. Mm-hmm. But I still think it probably would have worked.
Well, you finished second right behind, like on the wheel of the person that finished first on Ivar's wheel. So not bad. When you look at 200 miles and it comes down to that sort of differential, that's pretty.
Yeah. Still happy. I'm happy with how it went, like still anything else for my first Unbound.
Yeah. Awesome. What else? Any other remaining things that you would want to do different next time? You don't have to share all the, the plans or anything, but.
I don't know. I was thinking about that. I think everything was pretty dialed, honestly. I'd say I did a lot of work this winter on getting more aerodynamic on the bike, and I think that paid off. Like my position's gotten noticeably smaller and smaller over the last few months, and I think I finally got down to a point where like it's on par with a lot of the World Tour road guys, just looking at photos and stuff. So that's been that was good. I guess if it's rainy again, I would change a few things, like not run vented shoes because they filled with sand and my feet were extremely uncomfortable. So little things like that, but I didn't even think about. It also wasn't really supposed to rain, so it also wasn't in my mind. But like those small things add up. Like I was extremely uncomfortable for the last 4 hours because the whole sole was filled with sand. Oh, it just entered in through all the vents. And yeah, so small things like that. But I was well prepared. I had all my tire plugs and all that stuff ready to go. I could clean up the pits a little bit. Like I was still one of the first ones out. I was the first one out of the second pit, and I was like third one out of the first pit. But I think I could clean those up a little bit more and save 15 seconds here or there, which adds up. Otherwise I think like I did a pretty good job for my first attempt at this race. Like it seems like a lot of guys still were a bit of a cluster in the pits, and I was in and out for my first time doing it. So I think, did okay.
I'd say you did all right, Keegan. Yeah, good job. Keegan, where can people follow you and follow on with the rest of the races and the Lifetime Grand Prix and everything else you're doing this year?
Over on Instagram, Kegels99. Do my best to keep it updated, and Strava. Everything's over on there. Just Keegan Swenson. All the training. I don't hide anything, so it's all there.
Awesome. Thanks, Keegan.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Ice Friction and the Feeds, Alex Wild. Good to have you, Alex. Let's talk about Unbound a little bit here. So you finished in 10 hours and 17 minutes and 12 seconds. Your average speed was 19.7 miles per hour or 31.7 kilometers per hour. Your average power, I should say, was 247 watts and 272 NP with a max of 1,055 watts. You had a 0.71 IF. You're like textbooking this so far. Fantastic job. 1.1 variability index, which is lower than what we see for most. And we'll get into probably that at some point here. 506 TSS and 8,898 kilojoules. You spent 7% of your time above threshold. So roughly about an hour of your day was above threshold. Now, the interesting part is that's totally different than the athlete that we just interviewed here, Keegan Swenson. He's at the front of the race. You had different fortunes unfold for you for your race. Uh, Afterward, it's really impressive because your variability index smoothed out to the point where you were maintaining 1.04, which I mean was basically like a smooth TT effort considering the conditions you had and all those little turns that you had to deal with. Super impressive. So, Alex, what was your strategy coming into the race?
Me into the race was be at the front, just keep making splits. I think gravel's a little different where there's not necessarily pressure, but there's like this, like, I guess, gravel-esque thing where you just everybody works together. So my plan was just to keep pulling turns at the front until I couldn't anymore and hopefully be there at the end. Um, Unfortunately, about 40 miles in, I flatted on just a user mistake issue. We went across this bridge and the right side was smooth and the left side kind of had like a little divot in it. And I was just following the rider in front of me a little too closely and saw it too late. Tried to pull up my front wheel, but just ended up casing the back side of it with my front wheel and cut the sidewall. Um, I took the risk on trying to plug it. It didn't end up working, so I had to put a tube in. So that whole fiasco, I think, took 6 or 7 minutes, which at the end of the day isn't terrible for changing a flat, but when there's a group of 40 of the best gravel racers in the US, maybe even the world, then probably not going to make up much time. I gave it a pretty concerted chase for an hour after that, I think. I think in the power file I was doing like 310-ish, 310 for an hour, just seeing if like the pace let up at the front and I could take advantage of that. Or my other goal was maybe if I could pit faster at feed zone one, I could jump a little bit of time. So if I bled no time or made up a little bit of time and then made up 2 or 3 minutes by just going through the tech zone quicker than everybody else. Um, that first tech zone, I realized there's no way I'm making up time on 40 riders. And so I think that's where you see my power file level off. But in, at the end of the day, I was happy with it. I mean, if you look at the raw power, it's very similar to those guys that were at the front, but even for an hour longer, I think my normalized was probably a little lower because I'm not pulling through and off. I was essentially just riding solo the whole day, which you touched on with the variability index. It was pretty much just riding like 260 to 300 all day, which ended up being about 272 normalized. But I didn't have really surges and then offs. So even though my raw power was very similar, I think my normalized was lower because I didn't have those like 30-second to 2 minute peaks of pulling on the front for 300 watts.
Certainly. So, with despite the adversity, what do you feel like went well?
Really proud of the effort. I think it's very easy to have something go wrong early and just pull the plug. I mean, there's a lot of talk on how does a 200-mile race affect the rest of your season, and like it'd be very easy to just pull into that first tech zone and say, I'm not going to get a result today, so I'm just going to pull the plug. So I think I was proud of myself for respecting the race and also just kind of digging into that curiosity side of things of just like in years past, I think Leadville has been the biggest example. About hour four, my legs just kind of shut off just because I haven't done the volume in the past. And I think I was able to race all the way through like hour eight and a half, nine before I felt like the wheels starting to come off. Like I felt very comfortable. I wasn't wearing a heart rate strap, but just from experience, like I wouldn't be surprised if my heart rate didn't really even go above 150 maybe, just because it was just like a kind of slowly digging your grave at a high zone two. So yeah, I was happy with how I handled it after that and kind of just stuck with it and still finishing. I mean, it may sound like a lot of time, but I mean, and it's only losing what 45 minutes to 46 minutes or something like that on the lead group. I mean, if it was a Tour de France stage, I still would have made time cutoff. So that's pretty cool to pull away from that. And then being the data geek I am, I was checking on Strava like the segments as people kind of fell off that lead group. And as soon as people started to fall off the lead group, I'd start making time on them. So I think I can be proud of the effort, and I controlled what I could control and got after it. So it gets me excited for Tusher and Leadville because if I can race 9 hours, I can definitely race 4 to 6.
Yeah, and we're talking that pace that you're carrying at the front. That's why it gets really important for all of you to race at such intensity and be able to do that. So I want to talk about nutrition. Do you feel like that went well for you? You had a strategy to take a bunch of gels from Never Second was the brand that you're using there. Tons of gels.
I used a mix. So all the gels were definitely Never Second with a couple C30 plus, which is their caffeinated gels, 75 milligrams per gel. So I had 6 of those spread out throughout the day. Actually, the first USAT, so my fueling strategy, just to back up a second, was I had 3 USAT packs, all with 4 scoops of scratch hydration mix, so 80 grams of carbs per USAT bag. I was planning on taking 3 gels per hour, so pretty much every 20 minutes, take a gel. And then I took a hot shot before the start. And then at both aid stations, I was going to take a hot shot, and RX Bar makes these like peanut butter package just to get a little bit of protein, so I'm not using muscle as fuel. So that was my entire feed plan. And the first USAT bag I got, I guess when I put the bladder in or something, it became disconnected. Like the quick connect hose came out.
Oh no.
So I went to take a sip of it and I couldn't get anything out. And at that point, like you can't just stop on the side of the road and fix it. And I considered tossing it, but it also had 2 tubes and 2 CO2s in it. So I was like, all right, we're just going to carry around this 2-kilo bag of useless weight for the first bit. Luckily, I still had my 2 tall 26-ounce water bottles, and I had brought enough extra gels that I pivoted to a 4-gel strategy. So still to get the 120 grams of carbs, I took a gel every 15 minutes instead through aid 1 before I could get my new USAT. So at the end of the day, I took 35 gels. I forgot to take my peanut butter and hot shot at the second aid station. So I took 2 hot shots, 1 peanut butter mix. And then since I missed that first bag, I think I only went through about 6 scoops of scratch. But I think it ended up still being 121 grams of carbs plus a little bit of protein and fat from the peanut butter per hour for over 10 hours, and 0 gut rot, 0 distress after. Jen and I even went to Sonic Burger after, and that went down fine. So yeah, I think that the feeding side of things was great. I mean, I don't think I could really handle much more than that. And then even late in the race, like I have a personal, I don't know if it's issue, but I don't, you and I share this where I like flavor fatigue, like just really isn't a thing if you're trying to go fast.
Yep.
Like I don't mind the taste of Never Second. Like it was just citrus, and I think the caffeine ones are like espresso or coffee or something. But it's like when I'm out there, I guess I'm just doing like a job. So essentially, it's like I don't really care necessarily what it tastes like. It's what I need to perform. So I think maybe in hindsight I could have thrown some of the berry Never Second, and they just released a Coke caffeinated one. But I like those, the middle ground of the Never Second. You and I have touched on this off the podcast, but SIS makes like the 20-gram ones. So I always go for the tall liquid ones just because I think they go down better and you don't have to chase them with water. And then there's like the SIS beta fuel, which is 40 grams, which tends to be a little more thick. And I think the 30 is just a nice middle ground where every 20 minutes seems like a good amount of replenishing those carbs. It's liquidy enough that I feel like I get a lot more out. It's very bro science, but I feel like the 30 and 40 are closer than that 10 grams because the 40, you can't really get it all out because it's so thick. So you actually get more of the 30 out. So maybe you're getting 28 of the 30 grams and then 36 of the 40 grams. So it's actually an 8-gram difference instead of 10. I mean, again, very in my head, but I think,
yeah.
And then I think the other difference is Never Second uses the 2-to-1 ratio, whereas the SIS stuff uses the 1-to-0.08. And the research that I saw from, I forgot the scientist that helped start Never Second, but they were showing that even though the uptake is very similar, the like how much you can take without gut distress, your body actually utilizing, they were showing more athletes could utilize the 1-to-2 better. And I feel like I noticed that when I used the Never Second. So obviously N equals 1, and there is that research behind it, but I think the 2-to-1 tends to work better for me.
What didn't go well on the day? Looking back, what
Biggest
didn't
thing,
go well
if I
and what
could
would you change?
Yeah, if I could change one thing, it would be inserts. I think I was so focused on the flats being from these sharp flint rocks that I had heard of that I was like, well, inserts aren't going to save me from a sidewall cut. So I just kind of glossed over them, I guess, where if I had an insert in that front tire, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have flatted. So I think um, after seeing the course and how non-technical it is, and this is still something I'm getting used to when people tell me things are technical, I think I have to remember I come from a mountain biking background, and technical and gravel, as Keegan showed, us mountain bikers could probably do on slick tires. So I think keeping that in mind when people are like, it's a technical course, like you're going to want this. So I think I was trying to run lower pressure to try to, get a little bit more grip. And I mean, I probably could have just upped the pressure 5 psi front rear and still been totally fine and run inserts. And I think it would have just made my tires more bomb proof.
What pressure were
But
you running? Do you remember?
I ran 25, 28 at the start, but it was cold at the start. So I think I was expecting it to get up to like 27, 30-ish, probably later in the day. Yeah. So I could probably just run honestly like 30, 32 or even more than that and be fine. Like there was no sections where I felt like this is way above my ability level or I really need to split hairs on PSI, where in mountain bike racing, there's definitely those sections where you're on the limit of traction.
Mm.
And especially like Keegan mentioned this, but coming from mountain biking, we tend to have a higher level of skill descending. So we can kind of set our bikes up a little bit differently because of that. And I noticed that like when we were in the group, there's actually sections where I felt like we had gone uphill faster than we were going downhill. And there's just
Mhm.
like that, like you're in a group, but also like I just think mountain bike background gives you more of that technical ability. So I think just keeping that in mind for bike setup moving forward.
Nice. Anything else that you would change for the next time you do it?
Ours, I know it's controversial.
Can you say that
There
one
was
more time? Your audio broke up.
Oh, I said possibly aero bars. I think I'd consider it and test them. There was an email that went out like through all the, like the top lifetime riders, and we kind of all agreed to not run aero bars, which I was fine with. Like, I mean, if that's what everybody wants to do, I hadn't really tested them, nor did I plan on using them anyway. So it's kind of an easy decision for me. It was kind of interesting. All the, I guess the drama over, I think like Keegan and Stetna ran like little tiny things, which do we call them aero bars? Do we not? And there was like, people were upset about it. I think I didn't really care either way just because the email wasn't really what made me not run aero bars. It wasn't like I had aero bars on my bike and then I was like, oh, sweet, we have this gentleman's agreement. I'm going to take them off. But I could see how some people would be upset with like if this email went out and then they're like, okay, I'm going to leave the aero bars at home. And then there's all this like sneaky stuff. But I mean, it's all racing. If the rules allow it, then at the end of the day, it's your decision whether to run it or not. So I think
Absolutely.
just coming down to that, it seems like it would have made a difference in my race because I was solo. I think probably if I was in the lead group and getting a draft, I wouldn't really care so much about aero bars because I think there also is that kind of, I guess, gentleman's agreement that we don't use them in groups just because it can be dangerous. They're only kind of for use when you're solo or if everybody in your group has aero bars. I don't know, but essentially I was solo for 150 out of 160 miles. So just having like these bars I could just sit in and chill and push out power sounded quite pleasant because at the end I was like changing arm position every 5 seconds to try to find somewhere more comfortable or different. But
No
I mean,
doubt.
it is what it is. And I don't think, I think it was the flat, not aero bars that would have made the difference. I think if I didn't flat, then I would have been at the front. So I don't
Good
think aero
objective
bars would have changed it.
analysis. I like that. And maybe, maybe you might be able to find a wind tunnel. I assume there's one probably not too far from you that you might be able to get into to figure out. So, Alex, thank you so much. Congrats, man. So this is something that earlier in the year you weren't going to do and you took it on, and it's something really big. And I'm glad that we could see that from you. You have learnings and you make mistakes, and we all do, and it's cool to learn from it. So thanks for sharing this with us.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, where can athletes get in touch with you and follow you along as you go through the rest of the races on your calendar?
Yeah, Instagram's the easiest. I check every message, even if it goes to the like the non-following or whatever inbox. So shoot me a net message over there at Alex Wild MTB.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Alex. Appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed that special episode of the Ask a Cycling Coach podcast. And if you have training questions that you want answers to, you should go to trainerroad.com/podcast and submit those questions in the form so that we can hopefully address them in coming weeks. We're looking forward to doing that with you next week, as well as all the weeks thereafter with the typical host that we have. And if you're listening to this, please rate the podcast on whatever platform you listen to, Spotify, iTunes, whatever you use. And also, head over to trainerroad.com. Sign up to become a faster cyclist. Go to our YouTube channel. Check out the new Cycling Science Explained video about blood flow restriction. We'll talk to y'all next week. Thanks, everybody.